"Mom, did you enjoy Thanksgiving dinner?" Those were the words my son asked me 3 days later, and for a moment I honestly thought he had called the wrong person. I stood in my kitchen holding a coffee mug that had long gone cold and stared out the window at the bare maple tree in my backyard. "What dinner?" I asked quietly. There was silence on the other end of the line. The kind of silence that tells you more than words ever could. "My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 72 years old, a widow, a mother, and until that Thanksgiving, I still believed family always found its way back to the table. Thanksgiving had always been my holiday. Even when my husband Richard was alive, everyone knew I took pride in it. The recipes stayed the same for decades. The turkey was roasted the way my grandmother taught me. The stuffing came from an old handwritten card stained with butter and thyme. The pumpkin pies cooled on the same wooden rack that sat in my kitchen since 1983. Some people decorate for Christmas. I prepared for Thanksgiving. It was the day that made a house feel alive. This year, I started preparing 4 days early. I drove 20 miles to the grocery store to get the freshest ingredients. I polished the dining room silverware until I could see my reflection in every spoon. I ironed the linen tablecloth that Richard and I had received as a wedding gift almost 50 years ago. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet, but it felt full of anticipation. Ryan had told me everyone would arrive around 4 in the afternoon. My son, my daughter-in-law Vanessa, my 2 grandchildren. I pictured the familiar sounds already. The front door opening, coats being dropped on chairs, laughter from the living room. The grandchildren asking when dessert would be ready even before dinner started. I spent the morning cooking. By noon, the turkey filled the house with warmth and familiar aromas. By 3 o'clock, everything was ready. I changed into a navy blue sweater Richard always liked and put on a simple pearl necklace. Then I waited. 4 o'clock came and went. I told myself traffic was probably heavy. At 4:30, I checked my phone. Nothing. At 5, I reheated the mashed potatoes. At 5:30, I lit the candles anyway. The table was set for 6. 6 plates, 6 glasses, 6 folded napkins, 6 empty chairs. I called Ryan. No answer. I sent a text. No response. Another hour passed. The turkey began to cool. The candles burned lower. Outside, darkness settled across the neighborhood. I sat alone at the head of the table and listened to the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. Every tick seemed louder than the last. By 7:30, I finally blew out the candles. The smoke drifted upward in thin gray lines. I wrapped leftovers that nobody had eaten. I covered the pies. I stacked untouched plates back into the cabinet. Then, before going to bed, I opened Facebook. I almost never use it. But that night, something told me to look. And there it was. Vanessa had posted photos less than an hour earlier. A Thanksgiving dinner. A beautiful table. Ryan smiling. The children laughing. Friends raising glasses. Everyone together. Everyone except me. The caption read, "So grateful for family and the people who matter most." I stared at the screen for a long time. I enlarged each photo, hoping I had misunderstood something. Maybe it was from another year. Maybe it was an old memory. But the timestamp said otherwise. It was that evening. The same evening I sat alone beside a turkey that had fed no one. The same evening I kept checking the driveway for headlights that never appeared. I should have been angry. I should have called someone. Instead, I simply closed the phone and sat in silence. Because for the first time, a question entered my mind that refused to leave. If they could leave me alone on Thanksgiving without a single call, what else had they been doing while I trusted them completely? The house felt different after that night. Not because anything had changed inside it, but because something had changed inside me. For years, I had explained away every disappointment, every forgotten phone call, every canceled visit, every holiday that somehow became too busy for family. I always found a reason. Ryan was working hard. The children had activities. Vanessa was organizing everything. Life was complicated. That was what I told myself. But sitting alone at that Thanksgiving table had stripped away every comfortable excuse I had built over the years. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The leftovers were still neatly stacked in the refrigerator. The turkey sat untouched except for the few slices I had packed away. The dining room remained exactly as I had left it. The empty chairs seemed to accuse me of something. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I had ignored what was right in front of me. I made coffee and carried it to the kitchen window. Frost covered the grass outside. The neighborhood was quiet. As I stood there, Memories began surfacing one after another. Small moments I had forgotten. Tiny incidents that had never seemed important by themselves. 3 years earlier, my oldest granddaughter had performed in a school concert. I found out about it from photographs online. Ryan apologized and said they assumed I was busy. The year after that, the family rented a lake house for a summer vacation. I only learned about the trip after they returned. Vanessa said it had been arranged at the last minute. Then there was Christmas 2 years ago. I spent an entire week shopping for everyone. 2 days before the holiday, Ryan called and said they had decided to celebrate at a friend's house instead. He promised they would stop by later. They never did. At the time, I accepted every explanation because I wanted peace more than answers. Looking back, the pattern felt impossible to ignore. The exclusions were not dramatic. They were quiet, careful, almost invisible, like someone slowly erasing a pencil drawing until nothing remained. Around noon, I decided to take a walk. The cold air cleared my thoughts. I passed familiar houses, waved to neighbors, and tried to convince myself I was imagining things. Yet every memory led to another. Every disappointment connected to the next one. By the time I returned home, I felt exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. I sat in Richard's old armchair and looked at the framed photographs on the mantel. There was Ryan at 10 years old holding a baseball glove. Ryan graduating from college. Ryan standing beside Vanessa on their wedding day. I remembered how happy I had been for him. I had welcomed her into our family without hesitation. I trusted her completely. Then another memory surfaced. A birthday dinner about 18 months earlier. Vanessa had insisted on handling all the invitations. Several relatives later told me they never received any information about it. At the time, I laughed it off as a misunderstanding. Now I was not so sure. That evening, my phone remained silent. No message from Ryan. No explanation. No apology. Nothing. I found myself checking the screen anyway. Old habits are difficult to break. Before going to bed, I opened Facebook again. More photographs had appeared. Smiling faces. Family jokes. Happy memories being made without me. I closed the application and placed the phone face down on the nightstand. For the first time, I stopped asking why they had left me out. A different question had taken its place. How long had they been doing it? The phone rang the following Tuesday morning while I was folding laundry in the guest room. I almost ignored it. Lately, unexpected calls rarely brought good news. But when I looked at the screen and saw the name James Whitmore, I answered immediately. James had been our family attorney for more than 20 years. He had helped Richard and me prepare our estate plans, update documents after retirement, and organize everything after my husband passed away. He was not the type of man who called without a reason. "Good morning, Evelyn," he said in his calm voice. "I hope I am not interrupting anything." I told him I was free. There was a brief pause before he continued. "I wanted to check in regarding your trust. We have not reviewed it in quite some time." The question seemed ordinary at first. I told him everything was probably fine. Richard and I had worked hard to put our affairs in order years ago. Nothing significant had changed since then. At least that was what I thought. "That is good to hear," James replied. "I only ask because there has been some interest recently." I stopped folding the towel in my hands. "Interest?" I asked. "What kind of interest?" Another pause followed. This one felt heavier. "Your son has contacted my office several times during the past year asking general questions about the trust structure." I felt my stomach tighten. James was careful with his words. He always had been. "General questions?" I repeated. "About what exactly?" He explained that Ryan had inquired about timelines, distributions, and administrative procedures. Nothing improper. Nothing that violated any rules. But enough questions to stand out. I thanked James for letting me know and ended the call a few minutes later. Then I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at the hardwood floor. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Ryan had never shown interest in legal paperwork before. Growing up, he avoided anything related to finances. Even after becoming an adult, he preferred letting others handle details. Richard used to joke that our son could forget his own birthday if someone did not remind him. So why was he suddenly asking questions about trust documents? Why had he contacted James multiple times without mentioning it to me? The questions lingered all afternoon. I tried distracting myself with chores. I watered the plants. I organized kitchen drawers. I cleaned a bookshelf that did not need cleaning. But my thoughts kept returning to the same place. That evening, I opened an old photo album. Richard smiled from nearly every page. Family vacations. birthday parties, school graduations. In one picture, Ryan looked no older than 12. He stood beside me holding a fishing rod almost as tall as he was. Back then, his happiness seemed so simple. Looking at that photograph, I wondered when things had become complicated. Or perhaps they always had been, and I simply refused to notice. Before going to bed, I checked my voicemail. There was a message from Ryan. His voice sounded unusually cheerful. He wanted to know if I would like to have lunch with him sometime the following week. It was the first invitation I had received in months. Most mothers would have been excited. Instead, I found myself staring at the phone with an unfamiliar feeling. Suspicion. And for the first time in my life, I decided not to call him back immediately. I waited 2 days before returning Ryan's call. That alone was unusual. For most of his life, I answered whenever he needed me. If he called, I picked up. If he needed help, I showed up. That was what mothers did. But something had shifted. When I finally called him back, he sounded relieved. Almost too relieved. He immediately suggested lunch at a restaurant we used to visit years ago. The invitation sounded warm, but it also felt rehearsed. We agreed to meet the following Thursday. The restaurant sat on the edge of town, near a small lake. Richard and I had celebrated anniversaries there. Ryan had eaten countless birthday dinners there as a child. Walking inside brought back memories I had not thought about in years. Ryan was already seated when I arrived. He stood and hugged me. The gesture surprised me. Recently, our interactions had become brief and practical. This felt different. He asked about my health. He asked about the house. He asked whether I was staying busy. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation was pleasant, almost normal. Then small details began to stand out. He seemed unusually interested in my plans. Not vacation plans, not holiday plans, long-term plans. He asked whether maintaining the house was becoming difficult. He asked if I had considered downsizing. He asked whether I ever thought about simplifying my finances. Each question sounded harmless on its own. Together, they formed a pattern. I answered politely, but carefully. At one point, he mentioned Vanessa. He said she worried about me living alone. The comment would have sounded thoughtful if it had not come from the same people who left me sitting by myself during a family holiday. I simply nodded. Then something else caught my attention. Ryan mentioned a conversation about estate planning. He spoke casually, as though it were an ordinary topic. But he quickly changed the subject after realizing what he had said. The shift was subtle. Most people would not have noticed. I did. Years of marriage had taught me how to recognize discomfort hidden behind a smile. When lunch ended, he paid the bill before I could reach for my purse. Then he hugged me again and promised we should spend more time together. Driving home, I replayed every word in my mind. None of it was proof of anything, yet the uneasiness remained. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened an old email account I rarely used. Most of my family communication happened through text messages now. As I scrolled through years of messages, I found something unexpected. Several emails from school administrators regarding my grandchildren had been forwarded to me by other relatives. The original distribution lists included family members from both sides. My address was missing. In another thread about a birthday gathering, everyone appeared to have received information except me. At first, I wondered whether it was coincidence. Then I found another example, and another. The pattern stretched back farther than I imagined. Not months, years. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the computer screen. The realization arrived slowly. Nobody announces exclusion. Nobody sends a message explaining that they are removing you piece by piece from family life. It happens quietly, one invitation at a time, one forgotten phone call at a time, one holiday at a time. And suddenly you wake up wondering how you became a stranger to people you once held every day. As midnight approached, I closed the laptop and turned off the light. But before leaving the room, I looked once more at the empty inbox. For the first time, I stopped searching for excuses. I started searching for answers. The following Sunday, I did something I had not done in years. I went to church alone. Richard and I used to attend regularly when we were younger, but after he passed away, the habit slowly disappeared. Some mornings it felt too quiet. Some mornings it felt too difficult. Yet that week, I woke up with an unusual feeling. I did not want answers from Ryan. I did not want explanations from Vanessa. I wanted distance. I wanted a place where nobody expected anything from me. The church sat less than 3 miles from my house. A small brick building with white trim and a simple wooden sign near the road. Nothing about it seemed extraordinary. The parking lot was half full when I arrived. Families walked toward the entrance. carrying Bibles and coffee cups. Older couples greeted each other by name. Children laughed as they hurried towards Sunday school classrooms. I expected to feel out of place. Instead, I felt invisible in the best possible way. Nobody stared. Nobody asked uncomfortable questions. Nobody seemed interested in my personal life. An elderly woman near the entrance smiled and held the door open for me. A volunteer handed me a bulletin and welcomed me as though I belonged there. That simple kindness affected me more than I expected. During the service, I sat near the back. The music filled the room. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows. For the first time in weeks, my thoughts became quiet. I was not thinking about unanswered invitations. I was not thinking about trust documents. I was not thinking about Thanksgiving photographs. I was simply present. After the service ended, I planned to leave immediately. Instead, I found myself standing in the fellowship hall holding a paper cup of coffee. People chatted around folding tables covered with pastries. The atmosphere felt relaxed and genuine. Nobody seemed to be performing for social media. Nobody was trying to impress anyone. Then a man approached and introduced himself as Pastor Samuel Hayes. He looked to be in his early 60s and carried himself with calm confidence. We spoke for several minutes about ordinary things. The weather, the community, the history of the church. He never asked about my finances. He never asked about my family situation. Eventually, he looked at me and asked a simple question. "How are you doing, Evelyn?" The question caught me off guard. Not because it was complicated, but because it sounded sincere. I realized nobody had asked me that in a very long time. Not really. Most people asked out of habit. Pastor Samuel seemed prepared to listen to the answer. For a moment, I considered giving the standard response. "Fine. Busy. Everything is good." Instead, I told the truth. I said it had been a difficult few weeks. He nodded without pressing for details. "I am glad you came today," he said. "Sometimes people need a place where they can simply sit down and breathe." On the drive home, those words stayed with me. Sit down and breathe. Such a simple idea. Yet I could not remember the last time I felt that way around my own family. That evening, I noticed something unusual. My phone had remained silent all day. No calls from Ryan. No messages from Vanessa. Strangely, the silence no longer felt painful. For the first time, it felt peaceful. And somewhere deep inside, a realization began to form. The people who truly value your presence rarely make you prove your worth before offering you a seat at the table. December arrived with unusual warmth for our part of the state. Christmas decorations began appearing throughout the neighborhood. Lights hung from rooftops. Wreaths decorated front doors. Families filled shopping centers carrying bags and boxes. For most of my life, this season brought excitement. That year, it brought clarity. I continued attending church each Sunday. Slowly, familiar faces became friends. People greeted me by name. They remembered details from previous conversations. They asked how I was doing and waited for the answer. It felt strange at first. Then it felt natural. One Tuesday afternoon, I volunteered to help organize donations for a community food drive. We spent several hours sorting canned goods, winter clothing, and household necessities. Nobody talked about money. Nobody cared who owned what. Everyone simply focused on helping others. Driving home afterward, I realized I felt more connected to those people after a few weeks than I had felt to certain members of my own family in years. Then something changed. Ryan started calling more often. At first, it was once every few days. Then every day, sometimes twice a day. He wanted to know whether I needed anything from the store. He offered to help with repairs around the house. He suggested family dinners and holiday gatherings. Vanessa began sending cheerful text messages. She shared photographs of the children. She asked how I was feeling. She even mailed a Christmas card with a handwritten note inside. The sudden attention should have made me happy. Instead, it made me cautious. For months, I had struggled to receive a simple phone call. Now I could barely find an hour without hearing from them. One evening, Ryan invited me to dinner at their house. I accepted, not because I trusted the change, but because I wanted to observe it. The atmosphere felt almost perfect. Vanessa greeted me warmly. The grandchildren hugged me. Ryan insisted I sit at the head of the table. Throughout the meal, they repeatedly spoke about family traditions, future holidays, and the importance of staying close. Several times, Vanessa mentioned how much the children loved having me in their lives. Then the conversation drifted toward practical matters. Home ownership, retirement, long-term planning. The topics appeared naturally, but they kept returning. Eventually, Ryan asked whether I had updated any financial documents recently. The question arrived so casually that someone less attentive might have missed it. I simply smiled and said that all important matters were under control. A brief expression crossed Vanessa's face before disappearing. It lasted only a second, but I noticed it. On the drive home, my suspicions grew stronger. The timing felt impossible to ignore. Thanksgiving had passed without a phone call. Then James mentioned inquiries about my trust. Shortly afterward, attention and affection suddenly returned. I was beginning to see a connection. A few days later, James called again. This time his voice sounded more serious. He informed me that Ryan had recently contacted the office once more with additional questions regarding estate administration. Nothing inappropriate, nothing illegal. Yet hearing that information immediately after the sudden increase in family interest created a feeling I could no longer dismiss. That night, I sat alone in my living room beside the Christmas tree. The lights reflected softly across the room. Richard's photograph rested on the mantel above the fireplace. I looked at his smiling face and thought about everything we had worked for together. Every sacrifice, every long workday, every careful financial decision. For the first time, I asked myself a difficult question. If people only valued me when they believed something could be gained from me, who truly deserved the legacy Richard and I spent a lifetime building? 3 days before Christmas, I scheduled a meeting with James Whitmore. The appointment was set for 10 o'clock in the morning at his office downtown. Snow flurries drifted across the sidewalks as I walked from the parking lot toward the building. Everything felt strangely calm, not because I had all the answers, but because I had finally stopped avoiding the questions. James greeted me warmly and led me into a conference room overlooking the town square. A thick folder rested on the table. I recognized it immediately. It contained the plans Richard and I had spent years building together. Our home, savings accounts, investments, insurance policies, everything we had worked for during nearly 5 decades of marriage. James opened the folder and carefully reviewed each section. Nothing about the meeting felt rushed. He explained current values, legal protections, and distribution structures. I listened quietly. For years, I had viewed those documents as paperwork. That morning, I saw them differently. They represented choices. Every page reflected decisions Richard and I made with intention. We wanted our resources to help people who genuinely cared about family, community, and responsibility. As the meeting continued, James eventually looked up from the documents. "Have you been thinking about changes?" he asked. I took a deep breath before answering. "Yes," I said, "more than I ever expected." He nodded. There was no judgment in his expression, no surprise, only patience. I told him everything. The missed invitations, the forgotten holidays, the sudden increase in attention after questions about the trust began, the Thanksgiving dinner I spent alone while my family gathered elsewhere. James listened without interrupting. When I finished, he remained silent for several moments. Finally, he spoke. "Sometimes estate planning is not really about money," he said. "Sometimes it becomes a reflection of relationships." Those words stayed with me. Reflection of relationships. Looking back, I realized the church had never asked me for anything. Pastor Samuel never asked about my finances. The volunteers never cared what kind of house I owned. The people I met there simply treated me with kindness. They remembered my name. They welcomed me without conditions. Meanwhile, the people who stood to inherit the most from my estate seemed increasingly interested in my assets and increasingly disconnected from my life. By the end of the meeting, a decision had begun taking shape. Not out of anger, not out of revenge. Anger fades. Revenge rarely brings peace. What I wanted was alignment. I wanted my legacy to reflect the values Richard and I believed in. James explained several options: community programs, scholarship funds, charitable trusts, local organizations. We discussed each possibility carefully. One stood out above the rest. A community outreach program supported through the church that provided meals, transportation assistance, and emergency support for seniors living alone. The mission immediately resonated with me. I thought about countless older adults sitting by themselves during holidays, waiting for phone calls that never came. I thought about how close I had come to believing I no longer mattered. By the time I left the office, no documents had been signed. No final changes had been made. But something important had happened. For the first time since Richard passed away, I felt completely certain that the future of our legacy would be my choice. And mine alone. The week between Christmas and New Year's felt unusually busy. Ryan called almost every day. Vanessa sent photographs of the children opening gifts, baking cookies, and decorating the house. If someone had only seen those messages, they would have assumed we were closer than ever. Yet beneath the surface, something felt carefully managed. Every conversation seemed designed to create a certain impression. Family, togetherness, concern. The words appeared often. The actions behind them felt less convincing. A few days after Christmas, Ryan invited me to dinner again. This time he described it as a special family evening. He said everyone wanted to spend more time together before the holiday season ended. I accepted, not because I believed everything had changed, but because I wanted to understand what was happening. When I arrived, the house looked beautiful. Warm lights glowed from the windows. Music played softly in the background. The grandchildren greeted me enthusiastically. Vanessa welcomed me with a smile that appeared almost effortless. For a moment, I wondered whether I had misjudged everything. Perhaps people really could change. Perhaps I had become too suspicious. Then dinner began. The conversation started comfortably enough. School activities, holiday shopping, vacation plans. But before long, familiar themes returned. Ryan talked about the future. Vanessa discussed long-term family goals. Several times they mentioned how important it was for generations to remain connected. Then Ryan brought up estate planning again. He did so casually, as though the subject had appeared by accident. He mentioned a friend whose family struggled after an inheritance dispute. Vanessa added that proper planning prevented confusion later. I listened quietly while eating my meal. Neither of them asked direct questions. Neither of them mentioned specific numbers or documents. Yet the topic kept circling back to the same place. Future assets, family responsibility, financial preparation. The pattern had become impossible to miss. At one point, Vanessa looked at me and said, "You have always been so good at taking care of everyone." The statement sounded complimentary, but something about it lingered in my mind. For years, I had taken care of everyone. Meals, childcare, holiday hosting, financial support during difficult times, advice, encouragement. I had given freely because I loved my family. Yet when I needed companionship on Thanksgiving, nobody arrived. That contrast sat quietly in the back of my mind throughout the evening. After dessert, Ryan offered to help me carry gifts to my car. As we stood outside beneath the porch light, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "We need to make sure everything stays in the family," he said. The words were spoken gently, almost affectionately, but they landed differently than he intended. "Everything stays in the family." I smiled and thanked him for the evening. Then I drove home through the cold winter darkness. Back at the house, I sat beside the Christmas tree and replayed the conversation. For months, I had searched for evidence that I was imagining things. That night, I stopped searching. The evidence was already there. Not in one dramatic moment. Not in a single cruel statement. It existed in patterns. In timing. In priorities. In the difference between how people treated me when they wanted something and how they treated me when they thought I had nothing to offer. The next morning, I called James Whitmore's office and scheduled another appointment. This time, I was not looking for answers. I was ready to make decisions. The appointment with James took place during the second week of January. Snow covered the sidewalks outside his office, and the town looked quieter than usual after the holidays. This time, there was no uncertainty in my mind. Months earlier, I might have delayed the decision. I might have worried about disappointing people. I might have convinced myself that things would improve. But something important had changed. I was no longer making decisions based on promises. I was making them based on patterns. James reviewed the revised documents one final time. He explained every section carefully. A portion of my estate would still go to Ryan. I was not disinheriting my son. That had never been my goal. But the majority of the trust would now support the community outreach program connected to the church. The funds would help seniors living alone, provide transportation assistance, and support meal programs throughout the county. When James finished speaking, he placed the papers in front of me. I looked down at the signatures waiting to be written. Then I thought about Richard. I imagined what he would say if he were sitting beside me. The answer came easily. He would remind me that money was a tool. A legacy was more than numbers. It was a reflection of values. With a steady hand, I signed every page. The moment felt surprisingly peaceful. No anger, no bitterness, only certainty. Over the following weeks, I told nobody about the changes. Life continued as usual. Ryan called often. Vanessa remained attentive. Invitations arrived regularly. Family dinners appeared on the calendar. The contrast with the previous year remained impossible to ignore. Yet I no longer felt the need to confront anyone. The documents were complete. The decision was made. Eventually, spring arrived. One afternoon, James scheduled a family meeting to review certain planning updates. Ryan and Vanessa attended. I sat quietly across the conference table while James organized his paperwork. The atmosphere felt relaxed at first. Ryan smiled frequently. Vanessa appeared confident. They seemed to expect a routine discussion. Then James began explaining the current structure of the estate plan. As details emerged, the room slowly grew quieter. Ryan's expression changed first. Vanessa stopped taking notes. Neither interrupted, but both listened more carefully with every passing minute. When James explained the charitable trust and the community programs that would receive long-term support, silence settled across the room. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody argued. The reality simply arrived. The future they had imagined no longer existed. After the meeting ended, Ryan looked at me with confusion more than anger. "Mom," he said softly, "why?" For a moment, I considered listing every disappointment, every forgotten invitation, every holiday spent alone, every excuse. Instead, I gave him the simplest answer I could. Because people invest in what they value, I said. I decided my legacy should do the same. Nobody responded. There was nothing left to explain. A few days later, I attended church as usual. Volunteers prepared meals in the fellowship hall. Families greeted one another. Pastor Samuel welcomed visitors at the entrance. Everything felt ordinary, and that was exactly what made it special. Nobody there knew about the meeting. Nobody cared about legal documents. They cared about people. As I took my usual seat, I looked around the room and realized something. The greatest loss I experienced was never financial. It was believing that love had to be earned through usefulness. The greatest gift I received was discovering that genuine kindness asks for nothing in return. And for the first time in a very long time, I no longer felt alone.